Hi, this is Steve at blessedhope2018.com. Now, I don't have a great fondness for videos like this, but I thought that it was timely. I spent time going through the relevant texts and identifying and mapping the locations with Google Earth and defining many of the biblical names and terms, and I thought I owed it to my viewers. It's easy to just believe that Damascus is going to be destroyed before supper tonight and avoid studying the issues. So allow me to say before I begin here that I don't want anyone believing what I believe about this just because I believe it to be true. Now then, here is what I believe to be the case as it relates to what we see going on in Syria and how it fits into the prophetic timeline. Now, some believe that Isaiah 17 has application to the 8th century BC when the Assyrian army attacked Syria and northern Israel. However, verse 1 describes Damascus being desolated to the extent that it's taken away from being a city, and that level of desolation has not yet occurred. Isaiah 17, it opens with the words, "the burden of Damascus," which indicates that Damascus is the subject of a troublesome prophecy. The troublesome nature of the prophecy is immediately revealed with verse 1 describing the city of Damascus as a ruinous heap. In addition, there's a town there here I want you to look at on the map. It's a town it's called Aroer, and it's located in modern-day Jordan. And Ephraim, northern Israel, are also described as desolate and forsaken. That's a key point. It's not just Damascus that we're looking at. Other places in Syria will likely be impacted as well, as Isaiah mentions the remnant of Syria. The burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The cities of Aroer, that's 3 cities in Israel, are forsaken. They shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. Those are 3 cities in Israel. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. And they shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. Isaiah 17, 1-3. The city of Ephraim, or Ephraim in the wilderness, is a city or a village in Judea referred to in the Gospel of John, John chapter 11. After Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead, the Pharisees and the chief priests began a plot to put Jesus to death, so he retired to Ephraim with his disciples to stay there. They left Ephraim shortly before Jesus' final Passover, arriving in Bethany 6 days before the Passover. John chapter 12. Jeremiah chapter 49, 23-27 suggests that Damascus may be the target of a military invasion. Concerning Damascus, Hamath is confounded, and Arpad, for they have heard evil tidings. They are faint-hearted. There is sorrow on the sea. It cannot be quiet. Damascus is waxed feeble, and turneth herself to flee, and fear hath seized on her. Anguish and sorrows have taken her as a woman in travail. How is the city of praise not left, the city of my joy? Therefore her young men shall fall in her streets, and all the men of war shall be cut off in that day, saith the Lord of hosts. And I will kindle a fire in the wall of Damascus, and it shall consume the palaces of Ben-Hadad. Now, Ben-Hadad in the original text tells us that this is the name of several Syrian kings, one being a king of Aram. The reference may be to the current king of Aram, or perhaps to a fortress that now bears the name of a former king. The fortress of Ben-Hadad could simply refer to a fortress of the current king, or to a specific fortress that was known by that name. Anyhow, the palaces of Ben-Hadad Arpad, Aram, are all associated with Aleppo. Now, this is part of Aleppo even today. Arpad is a city in Aram, Syria. It was an ancient city located in northwestern Syria, north of Aleppo. Aram is a region mentioned in the Bible located in present-day central Syria, including where the city of Aleppo now stands. The text says Hamath is confounded. The Hebrew word means ashamed. Hamath is related to the name Hamas. Many of you know that. Hama is a city on the banks of the Orontes River in west central Syria. That's approximately 115 miles north of Damascus. The Hebrew text gives us as the word Chamath, a early Hittite settlement. Biblical name Hamath. Hamas, as you know, is a Palestinian Islamic fundamentalist movement engaged in terrorism against Israel. Arpad has heard bad news, says the original text. The word news means report. The word literally means report. They hear a bad report. They are faint-hearted. The word means to be in tumult, commotion, to be agitated, to be perplexed. Melt, M-E-L-T, melt is the literal meaning of the word. The word is anxiety. It says that there is sorrow on the sea. Now, the word in the original text says by the sea, not on the sea. But a comparison of translations really does reveal the implication. What it means is their hearts are troubled like a wild sea in a raging storm. It cannot be quiet. All the men of war shall be cut off in that day strongly suggests to me that we're looking at nuclear detonation. Now, make no mistake about it. We love God's people, Israel. I love Israel. But the text is clear. Israel boasts in its dignity and power. The fatness of Jacob's flesh shall wax lean. He shall become feeble as a man does by wasting sickness. The riches of his glory shall be removed because of Israel's unbelief. The time of her judgment has come before she cries out for deliverance and God redeems his people, Israel. The phrase, in that day, appears in Isaiah 17:4, which in an end-time context refers to the day of the Lord. The appearance of this phrase suggests that the destruction of Damascus will likely occur around the approximate time of the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is a phrase that defines a specific period beginning with Daniel's 70th week, which extends throughout the 1,000-year reign of Christ, the end of the millennium. You've heard me talk about this in other videos. Isaiah 17:4-6 indicates that the glory of Jacob will be greatly diminished to a small remnant, a small population remaining, which suggests that the events of Isaiah 17 will occur in the latter portion of the tribulation period, when Israel's population will be greatly diminished. The passage explains that the widespread desolation is part of the chastisement for their forsaking the Lord. To be seeing what we are seeing in the region right now, folks, indicates that the rapture must be at the door. So, who destroys Damascus? Well, chapter 17, 6-14, gives us a picture, I believe, of Israel fending off this invasion from the north, suffering her own casualties in the process. Yet gleaning grapes shall be left in it as the shaking of an olive tree. 2 or 3 berries in the top of the uppermost bough, 4 or 5 in the outmost fruitful branches thereof, saith the Lord God of Israel. At that day shall a man look to his Maker, and his eyes shall have respect to the Holy One of Israel. And he shall not look to the altars, the work of his hands, neither shall respect that which his fingers have made, either the groves or the images. In that day shall his strong cities be as a forsaken bow, and an uppermost branch, which they left because of the children of Israel, and there shall be desolation, because thou hast forgotten the God of thy salvation, and hast not been mindful of the rock of thy strength. Therefore shalt thou plant pleasant plants, and shalt set it with strange slips. In the day shalt thou make thy plant to grow, and in the morning shalt thou make thy seed to flourish, but the harvest shall be a heap in the day of grief and of desperate sorrow. Woe to the multitude of many people, which make a noise like the noise of the seas, and to the rushing of nations, that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. And behold, at evening tide, trouble, and before the morning, he is not. This is the portion of them that spoil us, and the lot of them that rob us. Isaiah 17:12-14 speaks of the demise of a group of nations who most likely destroy places in northern Israel and surrounding areas, like the ones I showed you on the maps, leaving behind them a wake of destruction as they advance toward their goal of destroying God's people, the Jews. This can't be speaking of Assyria back in the 8th century, because the warning is directed towards several nations instead of just one. The Lord will rebuke the attacking nations and will cause them to retreat, according to Isaiah 17:13. It is most likely Israel or an ally of Israel that destroys Damascus and other areas north in an effort to try and repel this advance southward. Flying over the region, we see that Turkey, where the throne of Satan resides, north of Israel, which gains control of the Islamic forces in the end times, leads a group of nations, that's nations plural, leads those nations south in a push toward Jerusalem, who must pass near or through Damascus. They will come near to destroying Israel, leaving only a remnant to turn back to the Lord. The timing of this event is most clear. It occurs near the end of the Great Tribulation, just before Christ returns. To the angel of the church in Pergamum write, these are the words of the one who has the sharp, double-edged sword. I know where you live, where the throne of Satan sits. Revelation 2:12-13. If you haven't seen my video on the Antichrist coming out of Turkey, you will find that video recently published on this channel. If you study through chapters 29 and 37, you'll see that the attackers who attacked Jerusalem and northern Israel will be wiped out during the night by God while they're sleeping. I believe that we can glean from these texts that the attackers will likely travel through Syria and northern Israel, leaving a wake of destruction behind them as they advance to destroy Jerusalem. The means or the tools God uses to do that is not the subject of this video. What does not seem logical to me, folks, is that these northern forces destroy Damascus in the process of advancing southward toward Jerusalem. I don't see why that they would desire to or need to. Joel gives us a picture of this wake of destruction left behind them as they advance. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong, there hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. Joel 2, verses 2 and 3. This is Steve. I love you all. I truly do. Thanks for listening.